Hey guys, even here with the old school abs, and in this video we're gonna talk about the bodybuilders who quote unquote never made it because of one body part, only due to one body part. Now when I say never made it, what does it mean make it in bodybuilding? Well, if you are a top bodybuilder like top 10 in the world, that's definitely making it, but once you achieve one result, you want to get another one, and if you are top 10 bodybuilder, you want to be top 5, and eventually you want to be the number 1 in the world. And this is going to be a list consistent of non-Mr. Olympia winning bodybuilders. So no Mr. Olympia winners are going to be mentioned in this video, obviously, because that's achieving the ultimate success in bodybuilding. So some guys, some bodybuilders who were really great, but they lacked one or more body parts, and for that reason they never achieved their goal, whatever the hell it was at the moment. So let's go with number 5, and this is not in any numerical order, this is just the one that I'm coming up with the first. So let's go with Johnny O. Jackson. Johnny Jackson was a top bodybuilder, and I mean still he's competing, but he is not in that top tier level anymore. He retired, and shortly after he came back, but he didn't really do that well. Anyways, back in the days when he was younger, he was really good. I mean, he had a lot of good body parts, but there was one body part truly missing. And if you know a thing or two about Johnny Jackson, you know which body part that is. And yeah, that's his quads, his legs. His legs overall were just too small for his insanely large upper body. Not only did he had an insane upper body, but he had some really dominant body parts. The traps. Johnny Jackson had one of the best traps in the history of bodybuilding. His traps were so thick, and that was probably because of his strength, of the level of his strength. He was active bodybuilder, he was the strongest guy of them all. He trained with Branch Warren, and these guys were crushing the workouts. They were lifting some seriously heavy weights, and Johnny Jackson was always stronger than Branch, even when squatting, even when doing leg exercises. But here's my problem with Johnny Jackson and his training style. Look, if you have a dominant body part, it would be logical that you don't have to really try hard to train it properly, because let's take Branch Warren, for example. He's perfect for making this point. So he has insane quads, some seriously sick, crazy looking quads. Legs, overall, he was just very dominant in his lower body. And when you have a dominant body part like that, so for example his quads, he doesn't really have to try too hard to concentrate, to flex his quads or to do anything like that. Because whatever he does, his body is going to do it the easiest way possible. And if you have a dominant body part, a strong body part, like his quads are for him, the quads will take over. Arnold could have just cheat curled 200 pounds and he would still have insanely large biceps. Ronnie Coleman was able to just do deadlifts and T-bar rows with horrible form and still develop the best back of all time. Why? Because these guys are insanely genetically gifted, and whatever they do, their strong body parts will take over the movement. In this case, we're talking about Johnny Jackson. His quads were his body part that was weak. But look at how he trained his legs. I mean, I'll say it again. Branch Warren could have got away with doing quarter reps, half reps, whatever. Instead of lunges, he could have done those long walks, or whatever you want to call them, and his quads was still developed, because that was his, again, strong, dominant body part. But that was not the case with Johnny Jackson. His quads were horrible. They never matched his upper body. And I think one of the reasons was the fact that he trained every body part the same. And he made a mistake, in my opinion, with his quads. He should have went full range of motion, deep on the squats. And I mean, what the hell are these lunges? What is this? Is this really a lunge? I mean, or is it just a long walk? I mean, again, if you're a dominant quad person, then sure, you can do it. But if you are not, this is just my opinion. Of course, these guys are professional bodybuilders. I'm sure they know what they're doing. But I think this is just common sense. It's logical if you ask me. But if you disagree, you can tell me. Anyways, Johnny Jackson, insane upper body, insane back, crazy traps. Everything else is just on point, aside from his legs. The reason for it might be this, what I just said about the range of motion, but it could be something else. It could be just simply genetics. Anyways, the legs were a reason why he never, cracked the top 5 at the Mr. Olympia or anything like that. Because he was very good upstairs, but his legs were never up to par. Let's go with the next one. The next one is my fellow Serbian bodybuilder Miloš Šarćev, and his best result at the Mr. Olympia was top 10. which is by itself an amazing achievement, don't get me wrong. I mean, he is the highest ranking bodybuilders from this region right here by far. He also competed at over 100 shows, and I believe 70 something of them were pro shows. As a pro, he was always in shape, so he competed very often. He introduced insulin to bodybuilding, and he did so many other experiments, and he is the mind. He's one of the most respected bodybuilders in the world and one of the best coaches in the world, but he achieved an amazing result. But as far as his bodybuilding career, I mean, top 10 was an insane result, but I'm sure he wanted to be in that top 6, and after that in top 3, and after that being the runner-up and winning the Mr. Olympia was a goal of every bodybuilder, and he didn't achieve that. Why is that? He always came conditioned. He was always in good shape. He had an amazing chest, very, very symmetrical and nice flowing physique. Very, very aesthetic bodybuilder who knew how to present himself. He knew how to pose, but he lacked a couple of body parts. That's arms, so biceps and triceps. Eventually, he added a lot of mass, but the shape wasn't there then. He didn't have peaky biceps. His triceps weren't exactly too big, too large. If his arms looked a little bit better, he would make much, much better bodybuilder. And also, his back wasn't exactly insane. I think mainly arms. If you ask me, that's what jumps to my eyes most. I mean, yeah, his back wasn't great, but at that point, nobody really had insane back. And even today, it's really rarity to see insane back. So, I mean, his back wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. Although his arms really threw his balance off, in my opinion. I mean, if you prefer physiques with smaller arms, sure, I mean, you can find it aesthetic, but me personally, I like to see freaky arms. Kevin Levrone or Phil Heath arms is ideal for me. So that was the body part that really didn't allow Miloš Šarćev to place better than top 10 at the Mr. Olympia. So eventually, I believe it was 1999, he decided to try some Synthol. He thought it could help him. People told him that it's gonna help him. So he injected a lot of that stuff in his arms and his calves, and that's basically what ruined his career, what forced him to stop competing. If there wasn't for that, he would be competing still, and maybe even today, who knows. So that was the reason what basically destroyed his career, and it was far from being a solution. So guys, if you have any ideas of using it, just don't do it. No, it's not worth it. Your natural shape of your muscle, whatever the hell it is what you should keep. That's what makes your physique different, and you just need to grow it. Nothing can change the shape of your muscle. Nothing, not Synthol, not anything else. Miloš Šarćev learned that the hard way. Still, top 10 at the Mr. Olympia was an insane result. If he had better arms and a little bit better back, he would have been top 3 for sure. Alright, so next one is going to be a bit controversial and not easy to agree with. Greene. Greene was very complete. He had insanely developed legs. Those legs were just top class. Hamstrings were hanging there. Glutes were on, even calves. Lats are out of this world. Shoulders on point, biceps, peaky, triceps, not exactly perfect shape, but they were there. Chest wasn't exactly top class, but it was good. But what he lacked the most were his traps. His traps were baby traps. Seriously, I mean, those traps were not pro traps. Not pro bodybuilder worthy traps. I mean, just compare them right here to Phil Heath, Kai's nemesis. And Phil Heath, he never really had a width. He never really had those wide shoulders and popping lats. But he had what he had, and he worked on those traps, on the thickness. So he actually kind of exposed Kai's traps even more, but it is what it is. I mean, you cannot ignore it. For whatever reason, his traps are looking really small right here in this photo. Now, I said this was controversial and hard to agree with, because could this small body part be the reason for somebody not winning the Mr. Olympia? You know, Greene was runner-up 3 times in a row. And eventually he gave up on bodybuilding because he wasn't happy with the results. He felt like he was robbed. I totally disagree with that, but could the reason be simply the traps, or was it much more into it? I think it's the traps, honestly. I mean, you can argue back and forth. You can say that there are many other things, and there are a lot of factors, but these guys were really close. I mean, the audience liked Greene more, and the judges always preferred Phil. I'm not sure what kind of decisions the judges were making, but if you look at this pose right here, I mean, this is the pose that actually makes the competition, that makes the winner. Back double bicep. So if you go bottom up, I mean, you can see that Kai has bigger legs. Much bigger quad sweep. You can see it sweeping from behind really clearly. You cannot see that on Phil's legs. Phil was more conditioned. He was always spot on, every Mr. Olympia almost. So you can see right here that Phil was more conditioned, but you can see that Kai's hamstrings were also decently conditioned, but bigger. Glutes, again, Phil's glutes were more conditioned, but Kai had bigger glutes. Lats and the width of the back, Kai Greene, but what Kai didn't really have, and what definitely made Phil stand out much more were his traps. So if Kai had Phil's traps, I don't know, I mean, you can say that, yeah, Kai had a lot of other weaknesses, but Phil also did, and it was close, but there was just one thing that could have shifted things, and I think that could have been very good traps on Kai Greene. Now, what is the reason to this? I'm pretty sure it's not training. I know Kai gave it all that he had into training his traps. Not for a fact, but I'm sure, considering his work ethics. So, I guess it's just genetics. But let's not get into the reasons, like we did with Johnny Jackson. Kai just didn't have very good traps. And if he had better traps, if he had world-class insane traps, he could have done better. And in this case, it means became the Mr. Olympia. What do you guys think? The next one is Dennis Wolf. So when I started this video, I said bodybuilders who never made it due to one body part, and this is not exactly the case with Dennis Wolf, but who cares? I'm not writing an essay, I'm not gonna get a grade for this. All that matters is that you guys enjoy this video, and I'm sure I need to mention this guy because of his calves. His calves were just not very good, let's put it mildly, not very good. So not only they were small, I mean, if you take a look at that right calf, that's fine, if you ask me. I mean, it's not great, but it's fine. But if you take a look at that left one, it looks like there is a part missing, and it looks like it was surgically removed. I'm sure that's not the case, but his inner calf looks super flat. So, again, I mean, this guy cracked the top 3 to Mr. Olympia, and that was against Kai Greene and Phil Heath in the top 2. No matter of his calves, he would never be able to beat those two guys. They were just different league. It was Kai, Phil, 10 places blank, and then Dennis Wolf, if you ask me. So those guys were different league because their completeness, because their fullness, combined with conditioning and everything, those guys were just super gifted. Dennis Wolf was amazing. He had a lot of muscle and insane conditioning, but it was just not in that ballpark. He was never considered a potential runner-up or winner, while Kai and Phil were there. So it didn't really ruin his career. It didn't really put him behind. And I also don't think the judges care much about this body part, particularly calves. I don't think they care about it at all. Honestly, the judges seems to be looking only knees above. They don't really care about the calves much. And I don't think it really affected his performance, but it's something worth mentioning for sure. Because if he had better calves, maybe he wouldn't place higher, but he wouldn't be criticized as much by the audience. He would be considered a much better bodybuilder if he was that complete. Because of the calves, he was kind of not considered top 2 bodybuilder because he wasn't complete and it was really obvious he was missing something. Again, back in the 90s, Dorian was able to win all those Mr. Olympias without a bicep, let alone a calf muscle. So it's not really something that broke his career. It's really not that relevant, but it definitely does make his physique look not as complete, not as symmetrical. So I think if he had better calves, he would be much better bodybuilder, whatever that meant. Placement at shows is not necessarily determining how good of a bodybuilder you are. And even if it is, and even if his placement wasn't changed at all, he would still be much closer, 3rd spot, and that's success if you ask me. In my book it is. And the last bodybuilder in this top 5 is going to be this man right here, and no, if you thought Dorian Yates or Ronnie Coleman had the best back in the history of bodybuilding, you were wrong. The best back in bodybuilding, arguably, was this back right here, and this is Joel Stubbs. He had slabs of meat all over that back. The lats were hanging, they were hanging low. They were attached so low, the traps were thick, the conditioning in that back was insane. He was wide as hell. Dorian wasn't this wide, nor was Ronnie, so he had insane width. And with that width, he also had a lot of thickness in that back, so that was just insane. And also, his muscle was just popping all over the place. He had a 3D effect, he was just so full, The arms were good, the front lat spread was insane because of those lats and because of that width, and also he wasn't lacking density and thickness in his upper body, but again, we have another case with Johnny Jackson. Lower body, legs were just silly. I mean, not good enough, nothing compared to his upper body. Johnny Jackson was great compared to Joel Stubbs. Joel's legs were just non-existent. I don't know what the hell the case was. Maybe he had some bad injury. I'm sure you can Google it and figure it out, but if he had really good legs, this guy could have been the Mr. Olympia champion. I have no doubt. So this was definitely, I think, the worst case of a bodybuilder missing one body part and not making it, quote unquote, because of that. Still, he is the best back in the world of all time, but nothing close to the best bodybuilders. It's interesting that if you take a look at other bodybuilders who had the best backs, that would be Dorian, that would be Ronnie, and Phil Heath. These three guys are also the best Mr. Olympias of all time. So if Joel Stubbs had really good legs, he could have definitely been in that, I don't know, top 3, probably. I'm just guessing here, but his back was just insane and his upper body was also from the front. The legs were just amateur-like, to put it mildly, actually. Very, very bad. Very, very bad compared to his upper body. So, unfortunately, he never really had matching lower body. If that was the case, it would be insane package, but it wasn't. And that's gonna be the last bodybuilder I'm gonna talk about in this video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, tell me down below in the comment section. Maybe I'm gonna make volume 2 if this one goes well. And again, like it if you enjoyed it. And subscribe to this channel for more bodybuilding videos like this. All the best, guys, and keep it old school.